Hi, my name is Mark Hoffman, and I would like to talk today about principles of permaculture as applied in my property, because I think it'd be useful for some people to understand how they can take the principles of permaculture and apply it in a property that they have, maybe a 1 acre, 2 acre, whatever you have. I have a 3 acre property. I'm located in northern Illinois. And I took a permaculture class in early 2003, and I've been applying it in my property ever since. Permaculture is really about designing our place in the ecosystem such that the design functions to support nature and whatever is in that ecosystem, and to support us humans who are living in that ecosystem. And it can involve all sorts of different things. Basically, it could be plants, animals, buildings, energy systems in the ecosystem that we're working with. So I'm gonna go around the yard here. We're gonna talk about various principles applied. So I'm going to talk about 11 different principles. In this particular talk, I'm going to talk about observation. In my experience of the various principles of permaculture, observation is the most important principle, because it's really necessary in order to understand how you need to work with your particular location. One thing important about permaculture is that it's very unique to every ecosystem. So because of that, that makes the principles of observation even more important. And unfortunately, we live in a society here these days where observation is not something we are really taught very well, because I think, in my personal opinion, is because we're so far removed from nature to a great extent. And when you work with nature, you learn to observe what nature is doing. And with observation, you need to observe what nature is doing and what works, what doesn't work in the various seasons, various weather conditions, all sorts of different things you want to take into account for with regards to the principles and the thought behind a permaculture-based system. So from the standpoint of observation, I've had an opportunity to use it for years. In fact, after I learned about permaculture, I realized I'd been doing this my whole life. I didn't really understand that I was doing that, but that I was working with permaculture, but I was, although there were a lot of principles that I wish I would have known when I first bought my property back in 1986, because I would have laid out some of the part of the property differently. Although it works for me, I've modified it and worked around that. It's better, if you're going to have a property, to learn the permaculture principles and how to apply permaculture first before you start really doing something with your property, if you want to use permaculture. So, observation. When I took the permaculture class, the instructor, one of the things that really caught my attention was that a lot of plants, and I do a lot of gardening and orcharding. We also have some chickens you might hear in the background. But in the permaculture design, the plants don't always need a full sun. And I didn't know that. And I learned that some plants do really well even if they have hardly any sun, but you can usually tell that in looking at a plant by the size of their leaf structure. If they're really wide leaves, oftentimes those plants do very well in partial shade, depending on what they are. So when I got done with the permaculture class, I was thinking, okay, I want to apply these principles. So looking around my yard, one of the things that we had an issue with was, before we bought an additional acre, we were running out of sunny spaces in our garden. And also at that time, my asparagus bed, which I had planted in 1986, I thought it was starting to die off. It turned out I just needed to feed it some compost, and it turned out okay. But before I discovered that, I decided, you know what, I'm going to plant another asparagus bed so I have a backup. So I wanted to figure out where I could best do that, and to get an idea of what would work, because I was wanting to find a place where I didn't have to go out in a sunny area and put in a whole new garden bed. So I looked around, and in my yard here, under this red cedar tree on the south side, I'm on the south side of this tree, I noticed, and I'd seen this for years, I have this asparagus plant. And this asparagus plant, you can see it, it's growing. Here's a new one. Like I say, it's the middle of August, so it's ferned out, which is what asparagus will do. And you can see it's very hardy here. But what's interesting about this is that this asparagus plant is in a pretty shady spot. Now, except for in the early spring, this particular location gets some sun, and there's some trees right here in front of me that you probably can't see, but those trees are obviously not going to, these are all fruit trees, and they're not going to have leaves in the spring, so they'll have leaves in this time of year, but it's not impacting this particular plant too much. As you can see, it's doing very well, okay? I mean, it's taller than I am, which is what asparagus can do, and I'm 6'1". So, observing this, I realized, you know what? I could plant asparagus in a place that would be partially shady, and it's going to do okay, as long as I got some good soil. So I did that, and we're going to look at that in the next segment.